The Discovery, the jungle moon of Verdaxa, hummed with alien life, its crimson canopy stretching endlessly beneath twin suns. Deep within the research facility carved into ancient stone, Dr. Lydia Voss pressed her palm against the translucent barrier, separating her from humanity's most dangerous discovery. Subject 43 prowled its containment cell like liquid death. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, its obsidian black carapace gleaming under harsh fluorescent lights. 4 crimson eyes burned with primordial fury, tracking every movement beyond the reinforced walls. When it moved, the metallic scrape of its claws against stone sent shivers through even the most seasoned researchers. "Another failure," muttered Director Marcus Holbrook, reviewing the latest incident report. 3 more researchers hospitalized, one barely surviving after the creature's electromagnetic pulse had overloaded his neural implants. "My patience is wearing thin, Voss. The Colonial Defense Force wants this thing weaponized or destroyed." Lydia barely heard him. As the facility's lead xenolinguist, she'd spent months studying the creature's vocalizations, if the bone-rattling growls and subsonic rumbles could be called that. Where others heard only rage, she detected patterns, rhythms, almost like language. "It's trying to communicate," she whispered, her breath fogging the barrier. "It's trying to kill us," Holbrook snapped. "Captain Torres arrives tomorrow with termination orders. Unless you have a breakthrough, Subject 43 becomes target practice." That evening, alone in her lab, Lydia pored over the xenoglyphs discovered. In Verdaxa's deepest ruins, the ancient carvings depicted beings remarkably similar to Subject 43, but these weren't monsters. They stood alongside humanoid figures, not as predators, but as guardians. Her translation software chimed. One symbol cluster finally resolved: Kareth, the silent watcher, first of the bonded. Lydia's heart raced. She cross-referenced the phonetic patterns with Subject 43's vocalizations. The subsonic frequencies, the particular growl variations, they weren't random. They were a name. The creature had been trying to tell them its name. She grabbed her research tablet and headed for the containment level. The night shift guards barely glanced up as she passed. Dr. Voss pulling all-nighters wasn't unusual, but tonight felt different. Tonight she carried the weight of understanding. The containment chamber loomed before her, its warning lights casting everything in hellish red. Beyond the barrier, Subject 43, Kareth, had gone still, as if sensing her approach. Those 4 eyes fixed on her with an intelligence that made her breath catch. For the first time in months, the creature wasn't growling. It was waiting. Lydia placed her hand on the access panel. One swipe of her clearance card would unlock the chamber. It would also likely mean her death. Every protocol screamed against what she was considering, but the ancient glyphs had shown her the truth. This wasn't a monster. This was a guardian who had forgotten its purpose, trapped and tormented until only rage remained. Tomorrow, they would destroy Kareth. Tonight, she would give it back its name. The approach. The containment chamber's access panel beeped softly as Lydia's card engaged the unlock sequence. Red warning lights bathed the corridor in pulsing crimson, and somewhere in the facility's depths, an alert chimed at the security station. She had perhaps 3 minutes before guards arrived. Beyond the barrier, Kareth had risen to its full height, obsidian plates shifting with predatory grace. The creature's 4 eyes tracked her every movement, and she could feel the electromagnetic field it generated crackling against her skin like static electricity. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, she stepped closer to the barrier. "I know what you are," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of containment. "Systems. You're not a weapon, you're not a monster. You're Kareth, the silent watcher." The creature's massive head tilted slightly, the first non-aggressive movement anyone had ever witnessed from Subject 43. Its secondary arms, smaller but equally lethal, flexed against its sides, waiting. Lydia's fingers trembled as she initiated the barrier deactivation sequence. The energy field that had contained humanity's most dangerous discovery for 8 months began to dissipate, particle by particle. "Dr. Voss!" Security Chief Martinez's voice echoed from the corridor behind her. "Step away from the containment unit immediately." She heard the thunder of boots on metal flooring, but her focus remained on Kareth. The creature could have struck already. The failing barrier wouldn't have stopped those massive claws. Instead, it watched her with an intensity that felt almost curious. The barrier collapsed entirely. Kareth stood motionless in the doorway of its prison, no longer contained, yet making no move to attack. Its electromagnetic field pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves, not the chaotic bursts of rage they'd recorded before, but something measured, controlled. "Please," Lydia whispered, taking a step forward. "I know you understand. I know you remember." Behind her, she heard the distinctive whine of plasma rifles charging. "One more step and we open fire," Martinez called out. "That thing will tear you apart." Kareth's upper arms spread slightly, not in threat, but in what almost looked like protection. Those burning red eyes never left hers, and in their depth she saw something that made her heart race. Recognition. The creature had been waiting. All these months of rage and violence, it had been waiting for someone who would see beyond the monster they'd made of it, someone who would remember its true name. "Kareth," she said, louder now. "Your name is Kareth." The effect was immediate. The creature's electromagnetic field shifted, harmonizing into a frequency that made the air itself sing. The growling stopped. The tension in its massive frame melted away like ice under summer sun. And then, impossibly, Kareth did something no one had ever seen it do before. It knelt. The massive alien predator, designed by evolution or engineering to be the perfect killing machine, lowered itself until its great head was level with Lydia's. When it spoke, its voice was a subsonic rumble that she felt in her bones rather than heard with her ears. "Kareth remembers," it said in perfect accented standard. "Kareth has been waiting." The bond, the silence in the containment corridor, was absolute. Even the facility's ever-present mechanical hum seemed muted in the presence of something impossible. Subject 43 speaking. Security Chief Martinez stood frozen, plasma rifle half raised, his tactical training warring with the evidence of his own eyes. Behind him, other guards clustered in the doorway, weapons trained on the kneeling alien that had just spoken in perfect standard. Lydia stepped closer to Kareth, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You remember. How long have you been waiting?" Though, creature's massive head lifted slightly, 4 red eyes focusing on her face with an intensity that should have been terrifying. Instead, she felt connected, as if invisible threads were weaving themselves between them. "Cycles beyond counting," Kareth rumbled, its voice carrying harmonics that resonated in her chest. The deep sleep took Kareth's purpose, woke to metal walls and painmakers, forgot the words of bonding until you spoke Kareth's name. "Bonding," Lydia whispered. Kareth's secondary arms gestured to ancient symbols carved into its obsidian carapace, marks so faint they'd been dismissed as natural texturing. Now, in the harsh light, Lydia could see they matched the glyphs from the ruins. "Kareth is Watcherborn, made to bond with truth speakers. Your kind called us demons because they feared what they could not understand." Behind them, Director Holbrook's voice crackled through the facility's comm system. "Martinez, report! What's the situation with Subject 43? Martinez pressed his earpiece, never taking his eyes off the impossible scene. "Sir, it's talking. The creature is talking to Dr. Voss." "Impossible." Maintain position, and Kareth's head turned toward the speakers, electromagnetic field pulsing with what Lydia somehow recognized as irritation. The voice box man fears Kareth still, does not listen, does not see. "They don't understand," Lydia said softly. "They see only the rage, the attacks. Kareth was lost. Painmakers brought fire sticks and cutting lights. Kareth fought because Kareth forgot the words of peace. The creature's great head bowed slightly. Kareth brought shame to the bonding ways. The admission hit Lydia like a physical blow. 8 months of containment, of tests and probes, and failed interactions, all because Kareth had forgotten its own purpose. The rage hadn't been malicious. It had been the desperate fury of a guardian torn from everything it was meant to protect. "It's not your fault," she whispered, reaching out instinctively, her palm pressed against the cool obsidian of Kareth's carapace, just above where a human heart would be. The moment their flesh touched, the world exploded into sensation. Images flooded her mind, vast cities of crystal and living stone, where beings like Kareth moved through gardens of impossible beauty. She saw the bonding ceremonies, truth speakers and watchers joining their souls across species lines. She felt the deep, abiding love that drove these guardians to protect, to serve, to die, if necessary, for their bonded partners. And she felt Kareth's centuries of loss, the aching emptiness of a guardian without purpose, until rage was all that remained. "I see," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. "I understand now." Kareth's field pulsed with something that might have been relief. Truth speaker sees Kareth is no longer lost. Dr. Voss. Martinez called out, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Step away from the alien. Captain Torres just arrived with termination orders." But Lydia barely heard him. The bond was forming, ancient pathways awakening in her mind as Kareth's consciousness brushed against hers. She was no longer just a xenolinguist studying an alien predator. She was a truth speaker, and Kareth was her watcher. The test Captain Torres strode into the containment level like a force of nature, his combat armor gleaming under the harsh lights. Behind him marched a full squad of Colonial Defense Force Marines, plasma rifles and particle cannons at the ready. His scarred face showed the grim determination of a man who'd made peace with necessary violence long ago. "Stand down, all personnel," he barked, his amplified voice echoing off the metal walls. "Subject 43 is to be terminated immediately per Colonial Command Directive 77 Alpha. Captain, wait!" Director Holbrook's voice crackled through the comm as he rushed to catch up. "There's been a development. The creature is talking," Martinez finished, his rifle still trained on Kareth, despite the alien's passive posture. "It spoke to Dr. Voss. In standard." Torres paused, his tactical visor scanning the scene. The kneeling alien, the young xenolinguist with her hand pressed against its carapace, the aftermath of 8 months of failed containment protocols. Irrelevant, he decided. A talking weapon is still a weapon. "Dr. Voss, move away from Subject 43. That's an order." Lydia didn't move. The bond with Kareth hummed in her mind, showing her flashes of the captain's thoughts, military efficiency, trained responses, and underneath it all, fear. Fear of the unknown, of things that didn't fit into neat tactical categories. "His name is Kareth," she said quietly, "and he's not a weapon. Stand down, Doctor, or I'll have you restrained." Torres raised his rifle, targeting systems painting. "Kareth with crimson markers. Final warning." Kareth's electromagnetic field pulsed once, a subsonic note that made every weapon in the corridor spark and whine. When the alien spoke, its voice carried the weight of ages. Weapon bringer comes with deathlight and cutting fire. Kareth knows this song, sang it on many worlds when bonding ways were forgotten. Torres's finger tightened on the trigger. "Threat assessment confirmed. Engaging hostile. Stop." Lydia stepped between them, her slight frame dwarfed by the massive alien behind her. "You don't understand what you're about to destroy." "I understand perfectly," Torres snarled. "A Class A xenobiological threat that's killed 17 researchers across 3 facilities. Step aside." Kareth rose behind her, its full height casting shadows across the corridor, but instead of aggression, its posture radiated protection. The creature's secondary arms spread wide, not in threat but as a shield between Lydia and the Marines. Kareth protects Truth Speaker, it rumbled, as written in the bonding ways, as sung in the deep songs. Fascinating, Torres said coldly. It's imprinted on you like some kind of pet. That just makes it more dangerous. He raised his weapon again, but this time Kareth moved, not with the bestial fury they'd documented, but with fluid grace that spoke of eons of purpose. In one motion, the alien placed itself completely between Lydia and the Marines, its obsidian bulk forming an impenetrable barrier. No harm comes to Truth Speaker, Kareth stated simply. Kareth will sing the death song before allowing harm. The corridor erupted in red targeting beams as every Marine acquired firing solutions. But something had changed in Kareth's stance, a subtle shift that registered in Torres's combat-trained mind. The creature wasn't preparing to attack, it was preparing to die. "He's not threatening you," Lydia called out, her voice carrying through the tense silence. "He's offering to sacrifice himself rather than let me be hurt in crossfire. Don't you see? This isn't a monster, it's a guardian." For the first time since entering the facility, Torres hesitated. His tactical assessment protocols warred with the evidence before him. An alien predator choosing protection over aggression, displaying what could only be called nobility. Behind his visor, targeting computers painted kill shots across Kareth's carapace. One word from him, and Subject 43 would cease to exist. But something in the alien's posture, the way it stood ready to die for another being, reminded him of his own Marines, of brothers who'd thrown themselves on grenades, who'd held impossible lines, who'd chosen sacrifice over survival. "Lower weapons," he ordered quietly. "Sir?" Martinez questioned. "I said lower weapons." Torres's command voice brooked no argument. "Stand down and observe." The Marines reluctantly complied, though their fingers remained on triggers. Torres approached slowly, studying Kareth with the calculating gaze of a professional soldier. "You'd die for her," he said. It wasn't a question. Kareth's great head turned slightly, 4 red eyes focusing on the captain. "Truth Speaker gives Kareth purpose. Purpose is worth all songs ending." Torres nodded slowly. In his experience, only 2 kinds of beings were willing to die for others, the insane and the utterly devoted. Looking at Kareth, he was beginning to suspect which category this alien fell into. The Guardian. 3 months later, the research station on Verdaxa hummed with a different kind of energy. Where once there had been fear and failed experiments, now there was wonder and unprecedented discovery. Kareth moved through the facility, like a living shadow, its massive form somehow managing not to disturb the delicate equipment scattered throughout the labs. Researchers who had once fled in terror now nodded respectfully as the alien passed, some even offering tentative greetings that Kareth returned with gentle rumbles. In the central laboratory, Lydia worked at a translation console while Kareth stood sentinel beside her. The bond between them had deepened over the weeks, allowing her to access not just the alien's memories, but the vast repository of knowledge contained within its genetically encoded consciousness. "The architects," she said, uploading another set of translated files to the colonial database. That's what Kareth's people called the beings who created the first Watchers. They weren't just alien, they were something beyond our current understanding of evolution. Director Holbrook reviewed the data streaming across his displays, shaking his head in amazement. Bioengineered guardian species designed to bond with others and protect entire civilizations. And we nearly destroyed the last one. Not the last, Kareth corrected, its subsonic voice carrying easily across the lab. Deep sleepers rest in many places, wait for truth speakers to wake them with name songs. Captain Torres, who had remained on Verdaxa to oversee the alien integration protocols, looked up from his tactical reports. "How many are we talking about?" Kareth's electromagnetic field pulsed thoughtfully. "Many. Each world the architects. Touched, they left watchers. Some sleep in crystal tombs, others became stone waiting for the proper words." Lydia felt a chill of possibility run down her spine. The statues, the ones we found in ruins across 17 systems. They're not sculptures, they're sleeping watchers. "Waiting for their truth speakers," Kareth confirmed. "Kareth can teach the wake songs, can show the bonding ways." The implications were staggering. Humanity had been discovering these statues for decades, cataloguing them as curious artifacts of dead civilizations. In reality, they'd been walking past dormant guardians, beings designed specifically to protect and serve those worthy of their bond. "The Colonial Council will want to weaponize them," Torres said quietly, "turn them into soldiers." Kareth's field darkened, a low growl building in its chest. But Lydia placed a calming hand on its carapace, and the alien immediately settled. "That's not how it works," she said firmly. "The Watchers don't obey commands. They bond. They choose their truth speakers based on compatibility, on something deeper than just authority or power." "How do we know who's compatible?" Holbrook asked. Lydia smiled, feeling Kareth's warm presence in her mind. "We don't. They do. Each Watcher will recognize their destined partner when they meet. It's written into their genetic code, an instinct older than human civilization." Over the following weeks, word spread through the colonial networks. Xenolinguists, xenobiologists, and even some military personnel began requesting transfers to Verdaxa. They came seeking the chance to wake a sleeping guardian, to form a bond that transcended species. Not all succeeded. The Watchers were selective, their ancient programming capable of reading intentions and compatibility in ways humans barely understood. Some applicants were rejected gently, others were ignored entirely. But those who found their match, they changed everything. Dr. James Brightwater bonded with Velthas, a crystalline watcher recovered from the ruins of Kepler 442b. The alien's mineral-based physiology perfectly complemented Brightwater's research into exotic materials, leading to breakthroughs in construction technology that revolutionized colonial engineering. Commander Patricia Vance found her partner in Morden, a six-armed watcher whose tactical intellect enhanced her already formidable strategic planning abilities. Together, they developed new defensive protocols that saved countless lives during the Centauri border conflicts. Each bond was unique, each partnership adding new capabilities to humanity's growing understanding of the universe. But at the center of it all were Lydia and Kareth, the first truth speaker and watcher to rediscover the ancient ways. Late at night, when the facility grew quiet, Lydia would sit in the observation deck with Kareth beside her, watching Verdaxa's twin moons rise over the jungle canopy. The alien's presence in her mind was a constant comfort, a connection that made her feel complete in ways she'd never imagined possible. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked one evening. "Giving up your rage for this?" Kareth's field pulsed with something that might have been amusement. Kareth was never meant for rage, was made for this, for watching, for protecting, for bonding with those who speak truth in dark places. The alien's great head turned toward her, four red eyes reflecting. The moonlight, truth speaker, gave Kareth back its song. How could Kareth regret returning to purpose? Lydia smiled, leaning against her guardian's warm carapace. Below them, the research station hummed with activity as humanity took its first steps toward a larger destiny, one where humans and watchers would face the unknown together, as partners, as the architects had always intended. The age of guardians had begun again, and it had started with a whisper in the dark. a forgotten name that changed everything.